kids are there, man. Support.
I thought one of them graduated.
Mackenzie will graduate in the spring. And even
Good.
better.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Fernando. Officially call to order this Apex Parks Recreation and Cultural Resources Advisory Commission for November 30th, 2022. I'd like to start by invocation, so just bow your head just for a brief moment. Okay, thank you. And now for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Thank you. First on the agenda is approval of the October 26th meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Perfect. Okay, meetings are approved. Which brings us to the director's report. Craig?
So pretty quick tonight. I know we got a long meeting, so I'm going to introduce Madeline Kavanaugh. She is our administrative coordinator, and I know you've seen a lot of information coming out from her lately. So, Madeline, if you want to come up and kind of give them a history
Yes.
about yourself.
Oh, hello, everybody. I am Madeline Cavanna, and this is my 6th year with the department, 4 years at the community center, 1 year starting the senior center, and now have this great opportunity working with Craig and Angela and this great team. So I'm just super happy to be here.
Welcome. We're glad you're here.
Thank
Yes.
you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Madeline. And
Thank you,
I will
Craig.
let Angela introduce Mr. Compright.
Hello, everyone. So we now have a new full-time Parks and Greenways Planning Technician. It's Tyler Gumpright. So I'll let him introduce himself and tell you a little bit about his experience and history.
Hi, thanks, Angela. So my name is Tyler. I have a Master's of Urban Planning degree from New York University. I worked for New York City Parks doing wetland restoration and forest restoration projects. And most recently, I had a job at Duke in research support at the Nicholas School. I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
Welcome. Yes, welcome. Bryant Park is one of my favorite parks in the entire world in New York.
What's that?
Bryant Park is like my favorite park in the world, in Manhattan.
Nice.
That's all I got.
Awesome. Thank you, Craig. All right, projects and operations report.
We're good.
We're good?
What's the
Okay.
timing on
I can
Pleasant?
talk about Pleasant Park.
Yeah, just
for a
Pleasant
second if
Park,
you want me
yeah.
to.
Sure.
There are a lot of details within your agenda, but out at Pleasant Park right now, the hope is we'll be able to open something in the spring. Okay, we're running into some things with CSX and signaling, so it'll be really interesting as to what we can actually do once we open the park. They will let us do some road work, but the signaling is what's kind of catching us up right now. But the hope again is we'll be able to do something in the spring. So that's the update on Pleasant. Playground surfacing, we're trying to get that in before it gets way too cold to do so. Because if we don't, then we'll have to wait until the spring to actually do that. And the temperatures are kind of in our favor right now. Weather is iffy in North Carolina, obviously. So hopefully that'll be taken care of pretty soon too. So.
Good. And I want to go on record and say thank you to Craig, too. I reached out to him about giving me a tour of the park, and he spent a lot of time with me that morning and showed me around and went to every little square, not square inch, but every little piece of the park, and it was beautiful, and I appreciate the time he took to do that. So if you haven't been there recently, there's been a lot of updates. I encourage you to reach out to Craig. He'll be more than happy to help with that.
Sure will.
Thank you.
If y'all want to do a group trip out there, we can do that too. So just let me know.
That's great. Thank you, Craig. Okay, program report. Nothing. Chairman's report. I have nothing. Now, for public comment. No? All right. Moving on. Old business, there is none, which brings us to new business. Angela.
All right, so the first new business item tonight is The Heights, which is at 406 South Salem Street. This is a planned unit development rezoning on a 1.34 acre site located on the west side of South Salem Street, and it is adjacent to West Street Park. It is south of NC 55 Highway, West Williams, and they are proposing a maximum of 49 multifamily residential units. I will go to this so you can see that close up. This project does fall under the exemption of Article 14.1.2 of the UDO because it is less than 51 multifamily units. But since it abuts the park, we have to consider land dedication for this project. But based on that size, it would be less than 0.38 acres left of the property if they were to dedicate for that use. So probably not make it viable for its development. So staff is recommending a fee in lieu of dedication for a total of 49 multifamily residential units. And if approved in 2022 by town council, would pay a rate of $2,226.05 per unit, but is likely to go to council after the new year, so it'll be at the 2023 rate when that adjustment is made.
Is there any impact to the West Street Park project?
There is not. They have asked to provide a pedestrian connection from their project to the park, and we are in support of that, but it would be something that would be determined at the time of the site plan being developed, so that we know whether or not our park plan and the location that we would be able to provide a connection from our side would work with what they're proposing for their development.
But no public reimbursement?
No.
It would just be a side, okay.
No, be a sidewalk, just a pedestrian connection.
Any other questions?
As much as I would love to see land dedication to increase the size of West Street Park, I see the benefit. I mean, you're gonna take the development property away if you try to do anything else. So with that, I'll make a motion for acceptance of fee in lieu for the Heights.
Thank you, Jeff. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Renee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay. Number one, thank you, Angela.
The second new business item for tonight is the Elevate 64 West Plan Unit Development. This is a approximate 35.16 acre project located on the south side of US 64 Highway West. It is generally west of the previously approved Legacy Station PUD, but not directly adjacent to it, and is northwest of the Deer Creek subdivision. This project is proposing a mix of uses, which also include a minimum of 30% as non-residential, and they are requesting a maximum of 392 multifamily units. Let me get to the next screen. So this project is, as I said, is directly adjacent to the Deer Creek project. In addition to a recommendation for them to provide Greenway for credit for construction, they have also offered to extend their Greenway construction offsite, which would include them completing this corridor into Deer Creek that we have a easement, but we do not have Greenway constructed, so they would finish that north to south Deer Creek Greenway corridor from somewhere in the rare area of 64 down through their project to the Deer Creek Reedy Branch Greenway intersection. Staff is supportive of that, and so we are recommending a fee in lieu of dedication for 392 multifamily units with credit for construction of Greenway within their project on the Deer Creek corridor, as well as offsite in the Deer Creek subdivision. The alignment and location of the trail would be determined at the time of site plan approval. And again, they would fall into the 2022 rate if they went to town council, but likely would go in January, and so would be updated with the rate of the new year. The only other condition is, per the code, that the Greenway Trail would construction must be completed and accepted prior to 25% of the total building permits being issued.
Any questions? Discussion?
Angela, what's the plan? Nobody's asking any questions, guys, I'm sorry. What's the plan for the greenway to go all the way to 64? Is there supposed to be any type of greenway along 64? I know it's not,
No, so they do have a transportation plan amendment that's likely to come through for the roadway network. And so our thought process is that when that happens, we'd look at where the non-residential development and the residential development was going to be in their site plan related to the roadway network and find a good terminus point that provided access to the residential.
so that alignment may change.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good. All right, do I hear a motion
That motion
to
to
approve? Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Great. Thank you, Angela.
And I apologize, I should have told you there's a representative from the applicant here who would have been available to answer other questions if you had them, so.
Well, thank you for taking the time.
So. All right. All right, so the third new business item on the agenda is our recommendations related to the Parks, Recreation, Greenways, and Open Space Master Plan. You guys have done a lot of legwork over the past year on this project, and today we're going to discuss the recommendations that will be a part of this plan. Obviously, you reviewed chapters that defined where we were, how we were, what information we've gathered. But we have Shweta Anaker here from McAdams to present and share those recommendations with you, and then have a discussion and work session.
Thank you, Angela. Right. Good evening, Advisory Commission members. It's great to be here and meet you all again. My name is Shweta Anaker. I'm the project manager and landscape architect at McAdams. And tonight I'm here to present the Parks, Recreation, Greenways, and Open Space Master Plan recommendations and implementation plan. We welcome any questions that you have during the presentation, and I appreciate your input on the information that we are presenting here. I have some breaks during this presentation and some pause moments where we can take the questions and get the comments back from you. And at the end of the work session, we would like to request the approval of the recommendations and the implementation plan with the input and comments. So a quick meeting agenda here. We will go over the project recap, what we have accomplished up till now. Then we'll have the recommendations and implementation plan discussion, followed by the request to approve. So Town of Apex initiated the planning process to answer 3 critical questions: where we are currently as the PRCR department, where we want to go, and how do we get there. And through this process, the department identified gaps, opportunities, and set up some aspirational goals to be achieved over the next 10-year planning horizon. So as you can see on this slide, we are towards the tail end of this project. We'll incorporate your feedback from today's session, and we'll present a revised version to the Town Council work session in January. And after receiving feedback from the council session, we will be presenting the plan for adoption. The framework for this plan is based on 4 key components: the community engagement process, work sessions with you all and the council and staff revealed consistent themes that inform the guiding principles, and the visioning sessions founded on the basis of recommendations and action items by discussing big ideas, challenges to achieve those, and then the actions to remediate those challenges. The 3 overarching themes that were revealed in the planning process are expand, experience, and excel. With the growing population comes the demand and need for additional parks and recreation programs. Apex community expressed a strong desire for expanding the Greenway network, commitment to environmental sustainability initiatives, and strengthening the culture of belonging. Secondly, Apex community desires to experience amenities and programs that are unique to Apex, that celebrates Apex's culture and history and brings the community together. And then finally, the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Department wants to achieve operational efficiencies as it continues to evolve and provide excellent customer service. So these are the 9 guiding principles that evolved from this. The first, under the expand theme, we have connectivity, recreation offerings, culture of belonging, and environmental stewardship. Under experience, we have health and well-being, sense of community, and unique to Apex. And then lastly, under excel, we have operations efficiency and customer service. So before we walk through the recommendations and implementation, let's take a brief look at the tangible outcomes of this plan in the form of projects that will transform the scene of recreation in Apex over the next 10 years. These projects will range from design and construction of greenway corridors, master plans for new parks, feasibility and design of new indoor facilities, developing environmental sustainability initiatives, policies for program fee structure, and then volunteering program for the department. Let's look at some of these examples in detail. Expanding greenway connectivity emerged as the topmost desire in all of the community engagement touchpoints, consensus across the staff, advisory commission, and town council. After the plan adoption, the town staff will use the new greenway plan and the prioritization matrix, which I'll share in a little bit, to continue the efforts of connectivity expansion throughout the town. At the end of 10-year lifetime of this project, the town will see significant additions to the park system. And you will see on your in your packet, we have some handouts that show the illustrative diagrams or the capacity studies for the potential priorities and programs for the new park sites. There is also a recommendation for new outdoor recreation facilities, and these could potentially include new outdoor classrooms for nature-based programs, multi-sport courts, multifunctional large open spaces, and community gardens. I'll go through 2 more projects, and then we can take a pause and look at those diagrams if you have questions. So the next project we wanted to highlight here is the Kelly Road Park Playground. That's another key project that the community will see coming to fruition. At the community engagement events, residents expressed the need to replace the existing structure with a new one based on their input and ideas. And then finally, recreation programming. Residents will get to experience the development of new recreation programs or adapting the existing ones that tie in with the guiding principles highlighted in this plan that offer multifold benefits, such as programs for all age groups that promote sense of community, offer active lifestyle, and educate the community about taking care of our natural resources. So we can take a pause here if you want to take a look at that and if you have any questions.
You, in the plan, mentioned some additional recreation centers. What's intended to go in those, or is that later in the?
In the recreation centers, we are recommending the feasibility studies for those. And in the, as we go further down in the recommendations, I'll show you the map that shows where we are suggesting we are suggesting them at the 2 new parkland facilities to see if we can accommodate 2 small recreation centers there and a nature center at the nature park. And then we have identified some additional geographic gaps within the boundary of Apex where additional new indoor facilities can be provided.
Do we know what would go in those indoor facilities, or is that something to be?
So a small recreation center typically includes spaces for multiple programs, classroom spaces. There could be pottery studios, But I think once you start to develop the feasibility studies for them and have additional community engagement, that will inform the actual programming for those.
Thank you.
To clarify on that, so you're suggesting two, based on what I read.
Correct.
Is that based off the needs assessment survey? So the citizens are asking for that, and they're asking for those smaller neighborhood-based ones, not the larger regional-based? I know John Brown one is kind of a hybrid. It's not quite a large regional, it's not quite a neighborhood. So so we're looking at those neighborhood style?
Correct. So we have, when we did the level of service analysis, we have about 39,000 square feet of need based on the level of service calculations. And so to accommodate those, it can be one large center, which does not make sense when you have the community that's expanding. So to minimize the gaps, the geographic gaps for access, the smaller centers would make more sense.
And the LOS is based off the national standards from NRPA?
Correct, yeah.
And to clarify, you're suggesting we just do feasibility studies, right? You're not, right? That's what the plan's saying, it's a feasibility
The
study.
recommendation is for the town to consider building those.
Sorry, yeah, the town,
Yeah.
okay.
All right, so moving on to the next recommendations and implementation plan. So the following several slides will show the recommendations developed under each of the guiding principles and associated action items needed to implement those recommendations. Since these were provided to you all for review in the agenda package, I'm going to only highlight a few of those. And that came from the early discussions with you all, from the visioning sessions, some that came from the community engagement, and the ones that are newly identified in the plan based on our needs assessment surveys, needs assessment. And then the highlights don't mean that those are the priority projects. So we'll go through those prioritization guidelines after we finish the discussion on recommendations. So let's take a look at the first guiding principle here, connectivity. Apex residents have expressed a strong desire for expanding the greenway system and connectivity to destinations, including parks, natural areas, and open spaces. Through the interdepartmental and interjurisdictional coordination, review of previous planning efforts, and our greenway systems expertise, a new greenway plan is proposed, and several action items are suggested to continue the greenway plan implementation. One such action is to adopt the greenway level of service at 0.46 miles per thousand population. And with that, the town can add additional 12 miles of greenways over the next 10 years. The prioritization tool that we have developed has identified the most needed corridors that need to be prioritized to leverage the multitude benefits greenway system provides. And then finally, think about the greenways as the public recreation spaces or linear parks. Using placemaking strategies to enhance the user experience will be one of the goals for the department. Well-designed trailheads with amenities, wayfinding signage, technology interventions will help encourage the greenway use. While proposing new corridors, we cannot forget what we already have. And so we need to take care of what we already have and maintain it to a high quality through allocation of funding and staffing resources. So what you see on the screen, probably really hard to see here and clear on your slides.
I would suggest looking at
Yes. It shows the prioritization tool that we have developed by our Greenway team. A total of 12 criteria are developed. They are ranked high, medium, and low with a point system. And we scored 10 corridors through this matrix and have identified 3 of them that will be further investigated through the feasibility studies. The feasibility studies will identify the ground challenges, opportunities, easement acquisition needs, and future funding investment. All right. Any questions on the connectivity guiding principle?
Couple things. You have 12 miles of greenway. That actually seems a little light, especially when we talk about 10 years out.
Yeah.
Is this ratio that you're using a projected population base, or is that on current?
It is based on the projected population, and it is also based on what the National Recreation and Parks Association standards suggest. Apex is doing really great in terms of that, so that's what is showing up here. So 12 miles is probably the easy goal for Apex to achieve.
I was thinking we should probably, in something like this, be a little bit more bold with that kind of thing, because it always shows up as the top of the list. So we may want to up that. And then you mentioned the gaps in here, which is good to close those gaps. I don't know if these are in order of preference, but that might be something we want to move up the stack also, is to close those gaps.
Closing the
'cause
gaps,
I think that's something that always comes up as well.
Right, right.
Yeah, I'd agree with the gap sentiment. I'd also agree with the NRPA's standards are challenging because you can't put every community in a box, and a lot of them are based off those larger cities that are well established, and those goals are harder to reach. So I would agree. Obviously, it's a bigger lift for staff and planning to look at that, but to be more aggressive with that number of miles, because that's a challenge anytime you're looking at their standards. They're always based off of, from my understanding, they're always based off more established cities, right? So with the growth that we're having here and the opportunity, while we still have some space out there, I would second that thought process. So obviously it's going to be up to council and you all, but I would definitely want that note in there to maybe the 12 miles needs to look at how it could be more and where are those opportunities.
Would you, I think that would be a point of discussion that we can also have with the staff, is whether, the level of service standard that we have is still at the highest NRPA standard for the densest population, so 0.46 per 1,000. Based on that, it came to be 12, but if we are increasing that goal, it's always going above and beyond what is suggested in there. And then also thinking about closing those gaps, I think that is
That's
definitely
a huge priority.
a good, yeah.
I don't think it's like a must, but I don't, to your point, I don't think it's a bad discussion to have, because you only have this opportunity so many times. Right, like it's, at some point, Apex, just like every other community here, population is going to continue to grow. So how can we continue to look forward? So, it might not benefit us now, but the kids who are in school or the families that are moving here. So I think that's why we're here.
And I also question whether the projected population parameters are accurate for Apex. I think we're a bit of an anomaly in many ways with everything that's going on. So growth projections, I think, are probably underestimated if I was to look at this
Yeah.
really closely.
Yeah.
So if you're using that as the metric for saying 12 miles, I would strongly support what Tom and Matt are saying, that I think it's on the light side, because if we're not saying that it has to be built, but if it's not in here over the 10 years, that gives us very little support to push for it down the road, whereas if it's higher, at least that gives us the opportunity when we're doing these fee and lieu recommendations that we can push harder for more greenway connectivity, more greenway trails. So.
Yeah, demographic projections is not the accurate science.
No.
So it's based on, how many certificate of occupancies you get. And so if there are still so many in the planning process, it's coming, but it's not there yet. And so we miss on that. So this is just more of a guidance for the town to look at, rather than absolutely, it's not absolute data numbers. It's a guidance document.
So what does it require to change that number, right? So, like, if we're saying we want to maybe look at more miles, right? What happens, what needs to happen in order to change the number in the report or to be considered for more?
So I would say, let's go back to that. The level of service standard of 0.46 miles per 1,000 population, that's probably the number we should look at, so that you are getting the higher number of miles to achieve in the next 10 years.
So are you
But-
saying move up the level of service?
move up the level of service ratio.
And do we have a mark to compare that to, or is that?
NRPA, that's the highest national level number right now, is 0.46 miles. Mhm.
And what I was saying, the challenge, NRPA is great, but NRPA bases most of its stuff off of larger urban populations, not growing suburban populations, right? So that's looking at your major, not that we're not on the cusp of a major metropolitan area, but that's looking at your, you know, your big northeast cities, your Atlantas, where it's a little different, right?
It's basically an average, right?
Exactly, right, and it's denser and, yeah.
Neutralizing across the communities throughout the country.
And to put into perspective, how many miles of greenway do we have today?
25? And I think 30.
Carrie has 90.
There,
And you have 30 in the planning, right? Around 30 miles in the planning. But constructing is different than just planning. We have the greenway plan that the staff will use for future greenways and easement acquisitions and all that. But constructing them and making sure the funding is available for design and construction, that is something that you want to achieve over the next 10
may
years.
influence the bond package or something like that in the future.
Yeah.
Well, if Cary has, what, 90, and what's their population, 120? I don't know,
One-
just
I
like
think
us, it's
Close to 130. I
130.
think. Mhm.
And we're at 80 or 60.
60.
We're almost 70. I think.
64.
we're almost-
65.
So they're 2X us and have more than 3X the greenway. Yeah.
Speak to it.
Sorry.
No, fine, it's something we've obviously spent a lot of time thinking about already. Some thoughts, because you guys are going to make a recommendation, right, is, one, what our fees are, right? Because our fee in lieu and credit for construction goes against how much we bring in that we can use to spend. So a fee in lieu study would help us in being able, not in a sense of that mileage total, but in being able to fund construction or provide credit. The second thing is, right now, we do not require or have an ability to require non-residential projects that have greenway to build their greenway. Other municipalities do. So part of the getting to that higher number might be requiring or doing a study to understand whether or not council would support and we could justify having non-residential projects build greenway. So, it's not something we would just write and say, but evaluate that, because that would tackle a whole nother set of corridors that right now we don't have a mechanism to capture, we'd be town funded. And the third piece would be to say, maybe instead of just saying build, saying town of Apex projects, that's separate from developer-built projects. So that we would be funding 12 additional miles, and those other pieces might come in addition to that. So those are three ways that we might be able to capture more mileage without it necessarily changing the metric that you're measuring.
Good point.
I'd be strongly in favor of
I like
us
that.
considering the non-residential and what that looks like, especially with the emphasis of businesses and the value they get from having greenway connectivity and all that
And like
stuff, so.
Middle Creek corridor from phase 2 north to 1010 is, it's entirely within non-residential.
Sure.
So if it goes on the street, is it greenway or side path, and who pays for it? But if
Sure.
those projects were to develop or help with that, we're developing in non-residential.
We also have to, we also have to look at the impact on maintenance
Sure.
and staffing levels.
That's my, for staff, without getting too into the weeds, but I think, Mary, you just nailed it. Like, while big picture, we'd love to be able to have that larger mark, but where's the capacity? But it goes back to what I say all the time, that you guys need more staff and, but, okay, thank you.
And real quick, one last thing, the 12 miles, does that count side paths, street side greenways, even sidewalk connections? Which
Won't
there's
count
no
the
other way to get
sidewalks.
no sidewalks, it's just the, okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
On a different piece, on your placemaking strategies, I'll do my little plug for public art here. So I think that's a good way to do placemaking also. So I don't know if we can
Yes.
add that into the verbiage as examples, so it stays top of mind.
Right, yeah, definitely. I think we have that in the descriptions of recommendations for types of amenities that can be hierarchically associated with each of the types of trailheads.
Thank you.
The second guiding principle under expand theme is recreation offerings, developing and expanding the current parks, amenities, and programs for growing population. It's an important consideration in this master plan. How much is, however, the question. And as we discussed earlier, we are using the NRPA park metrics data to quantify the level of service goals for the town. And accordingly, if the town adopts the level of service of 10 acres per 1,000 population, there is a need for about 193 acres of additional parkland over the next 10 years. And the goal is also to acquire this land in areas where the geographic gaps currently exist and provide equitable distribution throughout the town. And similarly, the town needs to build 39,000 square feet of indoor facility space over the next 10 years. Based on the needs assessment, the recommendations include 1 nature center and 2 small recreation centers. While there is a need for additional future parkland, the town already owns 2 properties in western part of Apex. There is also plans for park acquisition in the Viridia development. The town should develop master plans for these properties, balancing the community needs, desires, and offerings for the new trending recreation programs. Again, while everybody likes the new and shiny things, it's critical to take care of what Apex already owns. And through proactive planning, understanding the total cost of ownership, and regular investment through capital improvement funding, town can take care of the existing resources. One such project that could be implemented is enhancement to the Halley Cultural Arts Center to expand its potential for revenue generation. And then recommendations relating to the programming include diversified offerings for a wide range of users and interest levels. To accommodate the need for staffing resources, the action item suggested includes focus on partnerships with neighborhood groups and volunteers. Any questions on this guiding principle?
You first, Tom.
Yeah, well,
No,
I
you
went
go
first
first, right?
last time, so go.
So, is there a recommendation, so we're talking about growing diverse programs and adding programming, I see pop-up play, and it might be too small, so I'm gonna also look at Craig when I mention this, to put in CIP some kind of like mobile recreation vehicles or vans or those pieces, those have been, or is that already in the works?
I can tell you that we're already looking at that.
Okay.
For
You use the ARP funding even for those, at least, okay. Because
we're
just
already looking at
thinking, I know that's in the weeds, but baby steps, right, as we expand, that's,
It's something we've never done, but it is something that I've already got a plan in hand
Okay.
that I'm reviewing in respect to camps. Let's just put it that way.
Okay,
Youth
perfect.
camps. So,
and then I'll tie that into, I love the opportunity for us to add almost 40,000 square feet of indoor space, and I think a nature center is a great priority before anything else, but, again, without getting into weeds, just at a facility managers workshop in Mecklenburg County with their parks department and, talking about building these beautiful spaces and them sitting empty. And when we're looking at the study or when we're having these conversations, are we looking at what level are the current facilities? And I know this is 10 years, right? So what level are the current facilities being used to capacity? So are they at the point where we're able to offer programs and rentals and we're using that to the max before we go build another space, just like the greenways that needs to be staffed, maintained, and used. So y'all do a great job. I know that's how you do this, but I think that conversation needs to either be brought up or be said. Love opportunity for community centers. Also want to be cognizant that we're not subsidizing these large new 600 multi-million-dollar projects and building them community centers when they have on-site amenities. Typically, a community center is meant to be an equity piece where a community maybe doesn't have that access, a place for people to gather, especially if they're those smaller ones. So that's my thoughts. Again, I'll get off my high horse, but you have 2 new spaces. Are they being used to their capacity before you go build another one? especially as we're getting out. Based on where I'm looking, you want to build them. They're not necessarily in areas that have a need at the moment. They could, so just my thoughts from reading that. But Tom, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, I'm on the same wavelength with that. That was my point on the recreation centers also. And then if we were to do recreation center, are we locked in on 2? Because it seems as though a well-placed one may be more efficient to operate and maybe give more flexibility in the types of things that could go into that type of space also. So I don't know if that could be modified, that statement, in some way, that there's still kind of work to be done there. It seems very specific, 2 of these and 1 of those. It feels like there maybe is room.
And what I was gonna say is, when we get to the point of approving or making a motion, are we approving exact verbiage, or are we putting, I think what they're getting at is a caveat for a discussion later on, maybe some of those action items. So like I saw something that said, like where the employment hot centers are going, like a road out, well, it's hard to know where that's gonna be 10 years out, but we also don't wanna leave it where it gets approved and then, like they said, maybe it comes back and says, oh, maybe we should have done 1 or 2, but, so does it leave it for further discussion? That's what I'm asking, basically.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
that's what I
does leave it
figured. Okay.
for discussion. What we suggest in our plans is that the recommendations, because they are based on the guiding principles, you're adopting the guiding principles as the big umbrella, and then action items can change as the town continues to move over the next 10 years. So they can change as you seem fit, as new funding becomes available.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
Sorry. So the guiding principles and these as recommendations, the recommendations to build more community centers are based on the input that says we need more programs, or is it based on input that we need more spaces to gather?
You need more spaces for the programs, and you need more indoor spaces as well, to ensure that you are providing the services equitably across the town.
I'd just like to make a point that we've got, 27,000 square foot, I think, in senior center, and it's bursting at the seams right now. But I think that really reflects the fact that the demand was there, the population was there, the programming is a good match for all that. So I think definitely when we consider building facilities, we want to make sure that we know who's going to use it, when they're going to use it, and how they're going to use it as much as we can. It's so, what kind of data we've already gathered and we already know about that based on surveys, et cetera, I'm not sure. But certainly, I think it's important that we're thoughtful about that. At the same time, I think we need to be mindful of the fact that we have some examples of very successful use with certain populations. So the issue really may be, how do we really hone in on those populations, those needs, and exactly what will serve them best and the most, it shows the best stewardship of public funds.
I think that's what I'm getting at, Mary. It's like just being cognizant that we're not building a community center to build another community center, which was a trend for quite some time in this field. So again, Apex is kind of a unique space. You still have some space to grow and build in Western Wake County, which there's not much of that left. So from a capacity standpoint, right, what are we doing that's best stewards the town, the program, the community, the citizens? So I love the opportunity for us to build more community centers, but are they the regional? Are they those small neighborhood ones? Are they staffed, or are they, a hybrid one that's opened up just for programs and stuff? And I guess that's too much into the weeds as well, but I think those are those conversations that we kind of understand it to a degree, and I think council understands to a degree, but as this starts to roll out to public, we're really being cognizant about those expectations, because that's going to fall back on staff, and that's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. The expectations are going to be very high coming out of this, so I think being very thoughtful to your point about what these spaces are, and they're for everybody in the community, but staying away from that trend that, at least I've seen in my work, that a lot of times community centers are being built in growing communities to subsidize these large, and I have no problem with these beautiful large communities that are growing, because I'm gonna go move to one day if I could afford it myself, but right, like they're subsidizing that versus actually providing an opportunity for access and equity for a population that may or may not need it. So. I digress, sorry. My high horse today. Thank you.
Good thing, thank you. Right, the next guiding principle we have is the culture of belonging. The concepts of diversity, inclusivity, equity, and access, they all fall within that idea of developing the culture of belonging, where people feel that they are seen, they are supported, and feel welcome. Parks offer a chance for people to acknowledge our similarities and differences and still share some common interests. This can be achieved through equitable geographic distribution of parks and amenities and programs that celebrate various cultures that are represented in Apex. The maps here shows those geographic gaps and the potential areas for land acquisition and possible locations for the indoor facilities. The let's go back. The age-targeted recreation programs mean that the programs like Mommy and Me programs, youth and teen programs for ages 34 to 54, and then programs for active adults and seniors. It also means bringing in flexibility in program offering, whether it's virtual or in person or on demand. While town already provides special recreation programs, this recommendation also suggests focus on play opportunities for all ability levels by incorporating universal design and inclusive design principles. Areas that lack access to play could incorporate the pop-up play opportunities. And then lastly, placemaking strategies, again, are critically important to create welcoming and inclusive spaces that reflect communities' identity through their engagement. Any questions on this?
We all looked at NRPA's equity and practice principles that they've just released?
The inclusive, yeah.
The equity and practice principles that they just released?
Say one more time.
Their equity in practice?
Equity in practice, yes, I did, yeah.
Okay. I think it's important if we're using them as a baseline for everything else, we're also using that when
Correct.
we're talking about culture of belonging. So, cool.
I have a
think it's
quick
great that
question.
you've mentioned the new festivals and events.
Yep.
Also, because I think there's some fatigue from some of the other organizations that have been putting these on, and so you see them kind of waning in town. Like the ADBA is kind of, there's certain limitations to what they can and can't do, and as the town grows, the town needs to pick up some of these festivals to continue that spirit. So it's nice to see you have that in there.
I have a question about I'm a maps guy, so it's all about the maps for me. I'm just saying. So the first one I want to know, the park search area, how does it align with the current master plan, and will this be updated with the circles that we have on here at some point after adoption from council? Okay, perfect. And the other one is the indoor recreation search areas. It appears that the 4 circles that are shown are all in either existing parkland that we have, at least the 3 on the west, with the one on the south being Viridia.
Yep.
And I assume that Viridia has, or even the Wake Tech campus at Viridia, I assume that's what that 4th one is.
That's correct, yeah,
And
that's in the
are we,
video.
I know that Viridia is in play now, are we actively pushing them for indoor space, or?
Requirement. This
Okay.
advisory commission adopted, made a recommendation that was included in their
SD plan?
their SD plan, and it
Yep.
requires them to provide us with acreage that would accommodate a facility.
Perfect. I had heard at one point they were trying to redo that because they had they had been so specific that they were gonna do a 4 softball wheel and a baseball wheel and stuff like that, that may not meet today's needs for the town.
They have to provide the acreage for it.
Okay.
They aren't building.
I just wanna make sure that you still get the facilities of some kind at the location.
The current plan looks like they are reducing their residential units though,
Yeah, when we
which could
saw at
affect
the
that.
advisory commission, it was 8,000 units, and they're looking probably more to be in the 4,000 to 6,000 range. So the acreage requirements would be less, but they are required to provide acreage at a minimum to cover this. There's a 4 list item. They also have to do a park map for their project. And they've got some interesting things that they're proposing that would be maintained by the development, like a linear park that would be public access but privately maintained.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Any other questions?
Screen shut off.
Interesting.
We're done here.
There it goes.
And the back.
Sleep?
Good job, Angela.
All right, so the last guiding principle under the expand theme is environmental stewardship. The concept of environmental stewardship was consistently mentioned across all engagement opportunities. Apex residents value the access to natural areas in parks and understand the positive health outcomes access to nature provides. And so the recommendations focus on conservation efforts, environmentally sustainable operating practices, and educational opportunities. Based on the industry standard best practices, we are recommending 70 to 30 ratio for developed to conservation lands, which means that the town will have to acquire additional 65 acres in conservation lands, which will provide that multi-layered ecological benefits. Various avenues for promoting environmental stewardship include implementation of best practices in design and construction of projects, protection of sensitive habitats, stream corridors and wetlands, focus on green infrastructure strategies, and less dependency on non-renewable energy sources. Sustainability goals should be accomplished with the larger umbrella of townwide initiatives. And then finally, the outreach and education of residents through nature-based recreation programming is needed to expand those efforts community-wide. Any questions on these?
Good. Yeah, go ahead.
There was some discussion a few years ago about the implications of the new developments and the clear cutting of existing hardwood and softwood forests that were around the area. And there was talk of doing a survey of trees in Apex and a plan to try to protect that as new developments go in. Is that incorporated under this part of the plan in any way?
The goals for tree canopy protection have not been addressed in this. Is that something that falls under PRCR department?
The planning department is handling that stuff.
Screen's up like, Angela, you have to stand up again.
Let me see if Fernando's here.
Fernando.
Oh, they all
Maybe just wiggle the mouse, maybe that's
Are they streaming today? Because that means they're probably getting cut off if.
They're not streaming.
Are they taping?
They're taping, yes.
Taping,
Streaming,
okay.
no.
Looks like there's a bad connection to the.
It's back.
It's back.
Thanks for the help.
She walks in and comes back.
classic. I did have one other thing related to environmental. Is there a opportunity here to talk about having 100% EV vehicles in the Parks and Rec fleet? Do we have that in here anywhere?
There's no
Not a
comment
specific- yeah.
specifically in the plan to go 100%
Nice goal for 10
towards it.
years, though, you know, to do that. And within 10 years, it should be an achievable goal, I would think. Maybe a stretch goal.
There's a UDO requirement currently for a certain percentage of EV vehicles on sites.
I'm not talking about the chargers, I'm talking about actually replacing the fleet, the existing Apex Parks and Rec
Sorry.
fleet, to having them all be EV by, you know, in 10 years.
And council has talked about moving towards going to electric vehicles. We don't necessarily have a comment in here currently about that, though.
That's something we could add.
We can look at that, or it can also fall under the action item that says, you know, accomplish sustainability goals within the larger town-wide initiatives. So if it is the goal that the town wants to be 100% carbon neutral, that could fall under that larger umbrella instead of a department goal.
I think it gets nuanced too.
Yeah,
Are you talking vehicles? Are you talking mowers? Are you talking, not to get in
gets-
the. get in the weeds.
Say 100%, okay? Let's actually get really deep with this. If I have a dump truck, electric vehicle dump trucks,
May not exist.
they may not exist. So going 100% would be really pushing it
Yeah,
to
yeah,
say that.
sure.
Sorry, the screen's going out again, but if we could just encompass it in what Shweta has said as part of the town plan, I think that
That's trying everything.
he's in the office
I
out
mean,
there.
First, we try to
The
answer.
wording, obviously, we could wordsmith the language. I think there should be something in there. But I also think that this being Parks and Recreation, we should probably lead the way in this.
And I feel like we are. I
Right.
mean, we've already gone to electric mowers,
Yeah.
or at least we're
Yeah.
in process of changing them out. So
Well, let's toot our horn about that. Let's, you know what I mean?
That's
Let's put
right.
something in here to incentivize that and to really kind of drive it.
I just don't know that we put a number on it.
Well, I'm okay with, you know,
That would be where
cautious
I'd have
about
a
a number. But I think that we should put something in there about this.
Maybe something like prioritize opportunities to replace
Yeah, be more vague.
expiring vehicles or whatever with electric or EV, because there's also contracts in place where,
Sure.
depending, I don't know how you guys do your vehicles, but from my time in public parks and recreation, there's contracts of when we have and we trade in and all
It's
that.
availability too.
And availability, yeah.
Wouldn't that be a town goal? I mean, the town's replacing,
Yes,
the meter reader has the electric vehicles outside, so I think the town has been looking at them.
They are looking at doing this across town. Like, we have been given a kind of an initiative to replace all vehicles with electric vehicles. Well, as we're going through that process, there are not enough electric vehicles available to accommodate that goal currently. Now, will there be in the future? There's high probability that there would be.
Right.
With the goal for the town, like he's saying, it is a goal for the town. I don't know that we need to specifically put it in this plan though.
And there's major infrastructure issues with converting to all EV. I mean, you don't have the power grid, right? Apex doesn't have the power grid to switch probably to all EV, nor do you have all the charging stations. So it's more than just switching the vehicles
We
over.
have to be a little bit visionary.
I agree.
So
I
far, the
agree.
plan is-
Tom, I
Oh,
totally
no, I
agree.
agree with you, Tom, but like, you know.
I agree.
I think then separating, like making it a separate line item above the town, that gets into the way too many,
That's
it gets
okay.
into the verbiage, but I mean, I see what you're saying.
Agree, but Just a suggestion. so.
Well, I do think there's maybe opportunity to talk about highlighting what Parks and Recreation is doing from a sustainability standpoint. And not going too far backwards, but, you know, you talked about, there was some minor conversation about town taking on more events and things like that, and the fact that, you know, whether it's a Earth Day or spring type event where we're highlighting everything we're doing for sustainability, I feel like, and again, it goes back to most of the town events are not run by the town, opportunities to kind of toot the horn and highlight what's going on, and maybe bring those conversations around EV mowers and all those other things that are already happening to the forefront, and letting citizens be aware of that. I do agree with Tom that it wouldn't hurt to put something maybe not as specific as 100%, but maybe, you know, something in there that says prioritize being the leader of town, you know, being a leader of town departments.
It's in the document. It says right here, continue to invest in tools and equipment that reduces dependency on petroleum products. So it's there.
Yeah.
It doesn't specifically say EV charging EV
Sure.
vehicles, but it says that anytime Craig is looking at replacing a mower, is there an opportunity to get an electric mower, or is it 6 times the cost? I don't know the.
No, it's Craig's
But
spot on,
yeah.
because, you know, with the big shows, trade shows of Parks and Rec stuff, we were literally talking about this not too long ago we had a whole session from the city of Raleigh about how they're converting to electric feet and how their biggest challenge, they can't get anything. And infrastructure.
Let me speak to the small equipment piece.
Yeah.
So we've got, for our landscaping crews, we purchased electric blowers, electric weed eaters, electric trimmers. We can't get the batteries for them.
Yep.
All we have is the actual equipment right now. And we can't run it because we don't have the batteries right now to run them. Like, they've been ordered. So like when you start going the electric route, there's also time and waiting, at least at this point.
Yeah.
They may catch up, and I mean, you're waiting on everything right now.
Yeah, of course.
So it is a little different time in general terms, but I do feel like it's encompassed within the plan. We just don't have numbers to it.
And it's not very specific, and that's
Right.
okay.
And I'm
The
okay
master
with
plan.
not.
It doesn't need to be specific in the master plan.
I would push for an opportunity to highlight more of what's going on, though. Right. Especially if you're talking about building a nature center at some point. I don't know, I guess that's in here in some places, but I guess promote Apex Nature Park as a hub for environmental, but maybe it's promote Parks and Recreation as a leader in sustainability and environment, or I don't know the right wording. I don't know how y'all feel about that, if I'm going too far in the weeds, but.
I think when we have Apex expanding and we're saying environmental stewardship, and that is what we're doing. We're being stewards of that. So when we have a highlighted area in the plan such as that, I feel like that's
Given.
we're meeting that goal, or we're headed towards that goal, right? For the plan itself. That's what I would say.
Good point.
I agree.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, yeah.
Do you want to move forward? The screens are still off.
Not sure what we're on.
We don't have debate, we can't, there's no reason to be here.
Right. Now, let's move on to the next guiding principle then. There was one that is crossed out, and then you can flip to the next one.
Okay.
If there is, no, it's towards the end of it.
Is it the health and wellness,
That's,
health and well-being?
yeah, that's the one, yeah.
Okay.
Right, so there is a town-wide consensus again in the Parks and Recreation programs, that the Parks and Recreation programs have a positive effect on communities' health and quality of life. As we transition back to our post-COVID world, the importance of parks is unquestionable in our physical, mental, and social health benefits. Parks also begin to support access to healthy food options through provision of community gardens, farmers markets, edible landscapes, and programming. Similarly, partnerships with local healthcare organizations have the potential to help fund and offer facilities and curricula to improve health outcomes across all realms of health. Think about wellness hubs, concept where multiple resources are available, especially for vulnerable populations, for healthy living outcomes. This guiding principles overlaps with in several ways with other guiding principles, such as connectivity and recreation offerings, where when all implemented, the benefits will be multifold. Any questions on health and well-being?
When you talk about partnerships with healthcare providers, is that partnerships to get access to facilities that they manage and provide? Or is it something more like park prescription, where physicians are prescribing time in the park for health and well-being?
I think it's all open-ended, developing those partnerships with healthcare providers, because parks offer those health benefits. So it could be anything related to the programs that happen in parks, or ability to use facilities on certain timeframes, or developing something at individual recreation centers or the community center with the help of healthcare providers.
Just gonna ask that. I don't know, we don't really have a facility that would match Silver Sneakers right now, right? I guess the senior center with the
Senior center.
gym now, but is that included basically, or?
We don't do silver sneakers though.
Yeah.
Not right now.
Would, I can't remember, a few years back, someone came with the think you and I looked at it, Tom, with the outdoor gym that was gonna be sponsored by the artist and whatnot. I don't think we,
Oh, yeah.
but,
Was that the one at Salem Pond?
no, they want to do it at Hunter Street.
Oh, okay.
It's like that wall, there's one up in Mebane. Would that fall into this? Like some of those outdoor, I know you have some stuff already. I know it's a trend, but it's also a good waxes and wanes, right?
I would think you could incorporate that into any type of park amenity
That
for
makes
health and
sense.
wellness.
Yeah.
So.
I like the program aspect, and partnering with the healthcare providers makes a lot of sense. Cool.
All right, so we'll move on to the next one, sense of community. Apex residents think that creating connections and developing a sense of community should be one of the most important considerations when prioritizing parks and recreation investments. Parks provide a chance for people to connect, socialize, form friendships, and discover common grounds. Consider parks as social hubs where people with common interest meet through recreation program participation, or intentionally design pockets of park areas that offer work from park opportunities or networking with other professionals in the outside safe settings. Any questions on sense of community?
Did a sense of safety and security come up in any of the public input sessions as maybe a factor in a park's ability to create a sense of community?
We had asked that question in our scientific survey, and we got the majority of the people think that Apex's parks are safe.
Thanks, Fernando.
So,
It came up more in Greenway discussion, some of the comments from seniors about not knowing where to ride or what to ride in the sense of the greenways, and that, like a meeting place where they could meet other people and ride together, that way if they didn't know where to go, or they fell, or they needed assistance,
Right.
that they would be, so that social hub could be on the Greenway corridor as well, but that's where I heard the most about safety,
Yeah.
that concern.
I will say, the last point on this of funding for conducting program or staff to organize events, I'll just keep repeating that. I don't have any issue with the volunteer groups that are doing events, but as our community grows, there's some, it's not intentional, but the way those events are acted, gatekeeping happens, and if we're offering, the town is subsidizing those events already in a big way, having it run by staff removes a lot of the liabilities and gatekeeping and challenges. So whether it's Parks and Rec or someone else, I'm gonna continue to still have those groups as excellent partners, but I think there's,
I'll talk about special events really quick. So we're going through a new process, and we're working through a new plan for special events in general. Some people look at special events and they see Parks and Rec tied to it, right? But you also have police, you also have public works, you also have fire, all of these different areas. So we're all affected, right? And so we're looking at that right now, and from a special event perspective, we're kind of tapped out with our capabilities on the main ones that we currently have. And so for us, with this new plan, the hope is we can kind of relieve some of that pressure on town staff, and we'll see where that goes. So I would at least offer that.
I just wanna make sure you guys are getting the support through staff or planners or whatever you need, since a lot of times you're not really making the decisions, but town and staff are implementing, and then a lot of it falls back on town staff.
Well, I can tell you, administration's very supportive of and understanding of the pressure that we're under for special events right now.
Okay.
And there's we got a special events coordinator this year, which is very helpful to us, right? So they're mindful of that, and I can see being supported moving forward for that too. So
That's all.
Thank you, Craig.
all right, let's move on to the next guiding principle, unique to Apex. So our engagement touch points throughout the planning process revealed how much residents take pride in Apex's history and desire to celebrate it through strategically designed spaces and program offerings. Renovations and adaptive reuse of spaces that tell the story of Apex through public art plan, 1% construction budget dedication for public art, celebration of local artists and organization could be some of the ways to achieve the unique to Apex guiding principle. Any questions on this?
Excited to see public art highlighted.
Yep, I second that.
So is Tom.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really, really nicely done in there. Thank you.
All right, ready to move on to the next? Okay. All right, so this is under Apex Excel's guiding principles. Operations efficiency is the first one. The already existing high-quality parks, amenities, programs, and facilities are testament to the exceptional and talented staff Apex already has. The PRCR department can continue to excel by implementing the sound business practices, and these could include streamlining the recreation program management, regular customer feedback to track satisfaction and program success. Regularly updated maintenance and management plan is needed to track the total cost of ownership and proactively invest in management of high-quality park system assets. This also means regularly training and providing resources to staff who do maintenance and management of park facilities to ensure consistency across the system. The department staff is passionate and takes pride in their work. It is critically important for the town to invest in their career development, competitive salaries, and benefits to ensure staff retention and attracting new talent to the department. As the department continues to grow, several new positions are suggested, including a volunteer coordinator, public art coordinator, marketing supervisor, business development coordinator, assistant director of parks, and GIS data manager. The department will have to continue to assess staffing as they continue to add new assets to the park system. The department desires to achieve CAPRA accreditation, which is the Commission for Accreditation of Parks and Recreation Agencies. And it's crucial to get started on achieving compliance with various standards by adopting best practices in operations. The department should identify and develop partnerships with third-party providers to expand staff's capacity to offer new and competitive programs. And then finally, seeking alternative funding sources can provide enhanced opportunities to keep expanding and excelling the department services. There's a lot of action items under this.
I really, really agree with the new staffing positions. Now, would one of those, or is there some other position in here, be someone that would support, I know you, like Angela, you've worked a lot on trying to get sponsorships for, I don't know, like a scoreboard or a field or this type of thing. But that's hard to do when you have a whole job, right? Is that something that one of these people do, or is that an actual position also that would be something that would be of value? Where they work with, private companies to partner with.
Fundraising.
Yeah, fundraising, but basically sponsorships and other things like that. The size of this, I mean, it feels like somebody could do a couple of deals and they would pay for themselves, many times over, right? So.
The business development coordinator
that would be,
position
perhaps?
could,
It would
yeah,
be
could accommodate
embedded
those
in
roles
here.
and
Yeah, I
responsibilities.
would think that or your marketing is
Yeah,
Marketing.
Sponsorships.
Play a part.
yeah, okay, that's great. Thank you.
I think a lot of times we get marketing confused with communications. Like if
It's
you're-
it'll be a combination.
Combo.
That particular position would
Yeah,
be that,
yeah.
Marketing
I
and
think
comms.
that- Yeah, that's great.
or could be a part of that.
I agree. I'm excited to see y'all getting some of those type of positions that help growth and development and partnerships. I think that's been a lot on you and Angela to try to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
it could help, for sure. That one over there has helped a lot, by the way.
You got a lot of other
departments asking for new hires too, so it's, I mean, you can say you want 20 new employees and you get 2.
Too, yeah.
If you're lucky, you get 2,
I asked for 20.
so, yeah.
Yeah, I think the key is, can you show how some of these new positions can lead to revenue growth, right?
And I'll say this, council administration, they have been very supportive, through the reorganization that we just went through, and I'm trying to see the vision of where, just as a town, we're growing so much, and having that vision to understand with growth, you gotta have personnel too, right? So I think they've been very understanding and very supportive, so.
Let's move on to the last guiding principle here, customer service. So we heard excellent feedback about the customer service experience provided by the PRCR staff. In order to continue to deliver high-quality customer service, the department needs to invest in staff training and empowering them to connect with the diverse demographics of Apex. It is important that the department develop a new marketing division and establish the marketing plan to improve the outreach and communication efforts. And lastly, there was a strong consensus about developing a formal volunteer program for PRCR department. It not only provides support for the staff, but also develops a sense of ownership amongst residents. The critical step to getting this initiative started is to get that new volunteer coordinator on board. Any questions on this one?
I'd love to see something in here for the teens, for the high school kids. They were so involved when the skate park came in.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to see a program through the high schools now to get kids engaged. You know, I think there's a junior,
Yeah,
is there anything in there for the teens?
That is in here.
Good.
There, under recreation offerings, there are several recommendations
Under
for
the
youth and
good.
teens.
So yeah, there's some really good case studies out there, like, I don't wanna get into the weeds, but there's some great case studies. Wilmington Parks and Rec is doing an excellent job. Basically, they do a program where they're basically building their basketball officials for their leagues, which is a huge issue, by getting kids in the community, training them, paying them while they're being trained. And they're winning awards for it, and they're crushing it. And if anybody's in youth sports, it's impossible to get officials, referees, or anybody right now, so.
It's tough. And I'll tell you this, Elizabeth Shove, our program supervisor at the community center, she's got over 100 kids on the teen council right now, which is pretty amazing. So she's done a really good job with that.
I think the volunteer coordinator or the volunteer thing is huge. There's times that even on being on this commission, I'll find out there's something going on, and I find out because I see it on social media. It has nothing to do with staff, but it's because there's nobody there to reach out and say, hey, and volunteering is huge in our family. We would have been there in a heartbeat. And I think there's a lot of other people in this community that could help you all out and gives that ownership.
And that's another piece I would add from a special event perspective that would be pretty awesome, because that would take some pressure off of staff actually working the events too, if we're able to build that up enough.
Yeah, that'd be huge for you guys. I think a marketing plan and comms plan is also, it's not just you guys across the state, but Parks and Recreation does not do the best job of telling their story, so put someone.
And we recognize that.
It's not just y'all. When Doug was still the director in Cary, I called him out on it multiple times.
And there's so many kids out there now looking for volunteer opportunities to put on their resume when they start applying to, different colleges, that if they show that they've been volunteering for the last 3 or 4 years with Apex Parks and Recreation for every event they can think of, it's great for a resume builder too, so. So maybe she can start some of the conversation with the teen council and get that going.
Good job.
We had over 20 of the teen councils who volunteered for the West Street Park.
Yep, they did.
That's awesome.
And there were more of them than anybody.
Nice.
All right, so we'll move on to the implementation plan. So we went through a whole set of recommendations and action items. In total, we have 30 recommendations and over 150 action items. Quite overwhelming. So where do we start out of these 150 action items? Which one would come first? So we have provided the town with prioritization guidelines. These are not a scored matrix like we have for the Greenway Plan, but it's a series of questions to help guide the decision-making process as we start the implementation. The idea here is that over a course of 10 years, the action items will change, priorities may shift, or new funding sources may come into picture that new projects will have to take on. But overall, the guiding principles and the recommendations will stay the same because they are rooted in the community values and validated through the robust community engagement process. The action items need to be supported through that community engagement process and participation. And then thirdly, the action item needs to advance the park system in some way, whether it's a project that's closing a critical gap or bringing positive economic impact. So after these series of questions, the groups who are responsible for implementation of action items are identified. While these are primarily in the Parks Department, several items need close collaboration with other town departments to achieve town-wide benefits. In addition, we have identified 4 pathways for implementation: current or new policies or procedures, compliance with Unified Development Ordinance, CIP funding, or operational advancement. Finally, the last column shows the status or the progress, whether the action item is in process, whether it's not started, or whether it's completed. The goals is that the department staff will utilize the implementation plan as their annual work plan to establish goals, and at the end of each year, provide updates, what they accomplished, what were the challenges in achieving anything, and how those can be addressed in the next year. And so the town has already been working through those action items and including how they are relevant to the strategic plan that they are currently working on. So that's the end of our presentation. Any questions on these?
I have a couple of things. One is, first of all, thank you for including a whole lot of cultural resources throughout the presentation. But one thing I'd like to call out is on the headliner, it's not included. So can we include it there? It says Parks, Recreation, Greenways, and Open Space. Can it be Parks, Recreation, Cultural Resources, Greenways, and Open Space Plan? Seems like a miss since that's the department's name. And just to call it out and bring it up front, so it's obvious.
I think cultural resources can go a lot deeper into some of the areas that we are just highlighting the high level. So it's not in-depth cultural resources level plan in the overall master plan. So I'll defer to the department if they want to include cultural resources in the title.
It is in our title.
It's something for us to think about, because, I mean, like.
And it is
when
quite,
the
it's
word-
all
when
over the
when
document.
name gets so, like, that's what we were talking about, when the name gets so long, we call it the master plan, like, we abbreviate it by taking every name out to call it the master plan, just like you call something your comp plan. So it's-
That's fair.
so
I'm
it's
fine
kind
with
of
that,
like-
and take everything
Sometimes I'm
out.
like, we take everything out and go back to calling it, and then you're like, but then then people say, oh, it's your parks plan, or your
Park
parks
plan.
master plan. And so, I don't know, like, one time we talked about, does it need its own name? Like, should the plan have like a, but there's, then it's just sort of a hokey kind of.
Yeah,
name
right,
versus naming the list of everything, so.
The theme plan, yeah.
Is it
Well,
a master plan and then we put master plan for parks, recreation,
and cultural
greenways,
resources.
cultural arts, and open space? Because not all of those are in our title.
Yeah, I mean, I would take out Greenways and Open Space and put Cultural Resources back in so it aligns with the title of the organization, if we're looking at word conservation. But anyway, that's a recommendation, so you take it under, consideration, I
Come up
suppose.
with a name.
Couple other things I wasn't sure, I thought I had read in there, but maybe we didn't go through it. Is there anything in there with partnerships with schools? And I've talked about this before as far as using their physical resources, and I know we do today for basketball programs and some other things. But to do that more strongly, because there is a limit to how much communities can spend on facilities, and especially on weekends, those are underused facilities. When we're talking about needing classroom space or something like that for a program, a gym might be difficult to get a hold of because they might be using it, but there's certainly classroom space. I know it's probably technically difficult because there's different political jurisdictions and stuff like that, but I don't know if there's an opportunity to take advantage of that. They're distributed all over the town, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
I would offer this.
Uh-huh.
Just an example of what we deal with when it comes to the school system, okay? So
Yeah.
we have level 4 use agreements, which we get priority use of the facilities of 4 different school sites currently, right? So when we have priority use of those facilities, that's great, because of the level 4 use agreements. When it comes to indoor spaces, the cost that you incur by using indoor spaces can be kind of astronomical. And so they require somebody on site, no matter where you're at in the facility, somebody has to be on site from start to finish. Some require the opening of the facility as well as a custodian there at the same time. So you're paying 2 personnel to be on site. So currently, it's kind of challenging for us from a cost perspective too. And I don't like to talk about cost a lot, but you incur that cost.
Yeah.
And so, perfect example, we're at Apex Middle playing basketball. Go through a rental agreement, got an agreement in place. Well, we get an email last week. We have somebody with a key to the facility. That's an arrangement that's been in place for quite a few years now. No Wake County Public School person there. Now we've got to add Wake County personnel to open the facility. That's another, let's say, $7,000 for that program that we hadn't prepared for. And in their contracts, they're allowed to do that. They could say we need to add additional staffing there at any point in time. And so it gets really difficult when you don't have those, the control over the facility. So while we do have partnerships with the schools, and use of the schools, I would suggest that it's very limited though when you start talking about classroom space and different things like that, whether it's an amphitheater or whatever it may be. So we're there. We have some partnerships. I don't know that needs to be a priority in the plan though.
Okay.
The nice way of saying this is they make it very difficult.
Yeah.
Their customer service is not.
Wake County.
Wake County
Public
School.
School. Yes, yes.
Wake County Public School doesn't
Yes.
play nice.
No.
Mentality shift of Wake County Schools to being a good neighbor, I mean, they're in the sense of, not that they're not being good neighbors and they work with us, but that their policies aren't open to the kinds of things that the communities would think would be
Yeah.
beneficial to them as well.
Right.
That's where we've hit that wall in several arenas, not just space, but greenway easements on property, access to sites.
And when it comes to cost, just as another example, I don't know whether it was $15 or $20 that we were paying people last year. Well, they bumped that to $30 without anybody even speaking to us about that. That was just something that they did.
They're like that with everybody.
Wake County.
So
They are like that.
it doesn't matter that we're.
Where do I apply?
Where do I apply for that?
They like that with everybody, man.
And then I had just 2 other quick things. One was the depot and the Tunstall House. I remember reading about those somewhere in the documentation.
We have the recommendations in there.
Wanted to
for
make sure
those.
they're in there.
Yes.
That,
Yeah, I read that.
it's in
And they
play.
align with the downtown plan.
Perfect. Thank you.
Is there, quick question, speaking of downtown, is there I know at one point Economic Development hired a downtown coordinator. Is that position still doing stuff? She's still
in
okay.
the position.
Now, does she partner with Parks and Rec to help you guys activate those spaces sometimes?
Sometimes. She was actually the person handling the special events originally outside special event applications. And so when we hired the special event coordinator, that actually freed her up to do more stuff with downtown. So,
Yeah, because I think some of that placemaking, that urban, sorry, I can't put words together today. I think that's, whether Parks and Recreation is a partner or a lead on that is, I think downtown Apex is why a lot of people move, even if they're living on the border of New Hill to this area. And I think Parks and Recreation is a big part to play in that as it continues to expand and grow, so.
I'd like to add something to an earlier conversation about the recreation centers. I think Mary Lee made a great point about the senior center already busting at the seams, right? So we hit the mark on that, and I can tell you, at least from the programming that we're going to start doing in the community center, the community center will be full, and it kind of acted like a senior center in a way, because of the programs that we were offering throughout days there. If this plan for our day camps and track out camps, if that's approved going forward, that entire space will be activated, and that will fill the void that the seniors kind of left behind. Like, we've steadily been building that since the senior center opened, and backfilling staff. I would tell you, gym space is at a very, very minimum, and that is a need that the town has. There's no doubt. Now, whether that's 2 recreation centers, whether that's one huge one, that can be determined, right? We will need space. There's no doubt in the next 10 years, we are definitely going to need space.
I know the partnership strategy with schools is an extremely challenging one. What about faith-based?
That's what I was gonna ask,
That's a good point.
or private schools, or charter schools.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Faith-based in
Yeah.
particular are typically very willing partners, and they rarely get approached because of the obvious challenge, but I know lots of communities that have done that and done it very effectively.
And Holly Springs is actually doing that with Hope Community Church, and they rent out that facility consistently for their programming, so.
I mean, you have
Yes,
Apex
we have.
United
Pittsburgh
Methodist that has a gym.
Apex Baptist.
Yep.
Pittsburgh has a phenomenal program.
So does your gym space get you out of, it gets you Parks and Recs, basketball things, it gets it out of the schools, right? So you can start
Well,
having more games.
I don't know that we would ever really get away from the school side and the
Allows you to
rentals,
expand.
because currently, this is the other piece of that, right? So our basketball fills within resident registration a lot of times, like, and obviously, we can have residents on the wait list too. And that, to me, that's problematic, right? Like, we want to be able to offer a quality program. There's some departments that they'll take as many people as they can get, and it's not a quality program. You program for the space that you have. Well, some people will take and just play games. Well, I think from a recreational perspective, we need to have space for practices. We need to have space for games. So with the way we program, I feel like it's really all about the quality of teaching kids how to play basketball. And currently, with the school sites, we don't have enough space. So if you add another gym, we're basically relieving the wait list, at least some. Right. So I would offer that.
Adding a gym will delay the need to construct a new rec facility. Or
And
adding another
it could
gym,
delay
or
it.
it could
If-
delay
yeah,
it.
That's right. If we were to reach out to, I don't know, I'm just saying this, Apex Baptist, because they
Right.
have a gym, or Salem Baptist, shit. And I'm just saying those names, we haven't done that, right? But there are opportunities, I would think, that are out there.
This is the same discussion we had with Pleasant Park and the soccer fields. It's not that you're going to basically give them away to the local soccer facility. You're going to program them with our stuff first. And if there's any leftover, then it becomes, private community.
So the way I read it in the plan, not that it has to be specific putting in basketball or multi-use courts, but I didn't read that the way I read the recommendations, and maybe I missed it. But I think if that is a need, it might be important to highlight that in some space. I read it as a small, like a medium to small community center that has multi-use meeting space, maybe some interactive space.
That's how I read it, and I'm more on the side of what you're talking
Yeah.
about. I think that's what we need.
Yeah.
Well, and
That's
I would
why
say
just think
this,
it would include-
correct me if I'm wrong, weren't we discussing in the details, isn't there notations about 22,000 plus square feet for each of those
Correct. Yeah,
facilities?
yeah.
So if you're talking about 22,000 plus square feet, you're talking about the original John Brown Community
Community center,
Center.
yep.
So it would be one gym and then the classrooms in the back. It wouldn't be the additional offices up front and the other gym space. So that is that recreational space.
And maybe, you tell me if there's precedence for this, does it make sense to say, based on the needs assessment, amenities to include or to prioritize would be basketball or court, sport court gym, or sorry, wood court gym, whatever you want in there, right? Gym.
And
that
see,
could-
I honestly don't know that basketball courts or space was a driving force in the comments. This is me as the director seeing the pressure and knowing the pressure that we have for the programs.
But we need to keep that, I think that needs to be taken into consideration, right? The needs assessment should be survey, but it should also be program numbers, right? And the program numbers are dictating that we need more basketball or volleyball space or all the great programs that go on there, gym space.
And I think the other point that I would make, and this came up a lot when we were back several years ago talking about the senior center, and that was, responsible public stewardship requires that we are flexible about those spaces, that when seniors are not utilizing that space, that specialized recreation or whomever else is using that space. And I think so, being open to thinking about things in that non-categorical way is extremely important. You may have folks of different age ranges using our facilities at different times.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you can't maximize the use of those facilities, and indeed, we should be maximizing them.
And I think with the way that it's kind of presented in the plan, it does offer the opportunity to be flexible with the space so that you don't necessarily have to put in the specifics of the space within there. So for me, I don't know that it's off the mark that much within the plan.
As long as staff, y'all feel comfortable that it's guiding, to me, just when it goes public, what are the expectations of the public and what is that pushback you may or may not get? But that, my comments, they may not be as strong now that I know that you're foreseeing some kind of gym space in those spaces, because that's what's gonna be needed. If it was just large meeting space and multiple program space, I don't see there being, there's need, but not to the level of.
And there will be,
Yeah.
there would be programming space. It would be, my vision is very similar to what the community center was originally.
Which makes sense.
Our word is multifunctional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Multifunctional.
We agree.
Like for us now, the goal is get a needs assessment at the time we have the land and the location. Find out what we need from a programming existing, where our growth has been, and find a way to fit those into spaces that can be shared, updated, modified, worked, daytime is camp with tables and chairs, and
Yep.
nighttime is gyms, whatever, just those spaces being able to be the trend of today and the need today and then the next.
Right.
Because we don't know.
Just saw a space in Mecklenburg that had futsal, basketball, volleyball, pickleball, and padel, maybe one other, and it was lined for all of them, which was dizzying, but.
Everybody's like, what line?
They had the plexiglass of the futsal or the indoor soccer, but that's what you're spot on. You're gonna need, I'm sure the pickleball community is gonna want an opportunity to play pickleball inside, which during the day, if nobody's using it, why not, right?
So
Good
we
deal.
dodged the indoor swimming pool recommendation again? It had to have come up, but some of the input, but just not.
Partnerships.
It came up, but through partnerships.
Okay. It's a good idea.
Yeah, so to answer the question that you had earlier, we have those level of service calculations in the chapters that
Okay.
talk about individual gaps within like basketballs or tennis or pickleball or any other sports. But in the recommendations wording, we are using multi-sports and multifunctional spaces.
Perfect. Like, it was cool to see that cricket was on one of the plans for one of the other parks, and I know Morrisville is busting at the seams to try to accommodate there, so.
On a couple of them.
Yep.
Did you see how they're multifunctional?
Multifunctional, yeah.
Multifunctional as well.
That's all.
So I would just be, whenever, I think my comment is, and I work in the field, right? Whatever goes out, the final plan, that being very, there's gonna be some people go, whatever, and don't pay attention, but there's others that are gonna look at it and they're gonna have very high expectations for you as staff. And I would just be cognizant of the questions we ask you will probably get from others, so.
And I have to say, I did sort of flinch when I saw what you might expect in 2031, and the lead was Pleasant Park is fully operational, and I was just kind of like. So,
About time.
heads up on that.
We're hoping 2030.
We're really hoping.
Anything for curling or ice hockey, so.
Outdoor ice hockey.
Partners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Curling. Hey, I would love a good
Well,
ice.
we do have outdoor ice in there. It's part of the plaza, the Depot Plaza. And that's part of the plan for the holiday time period. Trying to get it as part of the 150th to do it next year for the first time. But we'll see where that goes. But that's part of the concept of that plaza, is to be able to do that.
Mike on a record skate.
He wouldn't use it. He couldn't go fast enough.
I wouldn't be able to check anybody.
It's gonna be one of those, what is it, like the plastic ice? No, don't, those are,
No.
you're gonna do real ice like they do, not the plastic ice like they do, and I think Graham does it.
It's gotta be real ice, so forget it.
I like it, I like it.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you all for your time and all your comments and feedback, and I would like to request you the approval of the recommendations and the implementation plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, without even giving exact verbiage, do we have anybody that wants to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we accept the recommendations as presented this evening in the Apex Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan, Greenways, and Open Space Plan.
Got that? All right, do I have a second?
Just a
Second
quick
that. Oops,
question.
Sorry.
We did make a lot of comments, so did any of those make it in, or that was all just idle chatter?
Well, we'll make comments within the document.
Did we make any major changes, though? I don't
No,
know
we
if we.
talked about the mileage, we talked
I think the
about.
Greenway mileage is
Mileage is
the
probably
biggest.
the biggest.
Mileage is the big one, I think.
So would you like the recommendation to be to include your, modification?
Comments or comments.
Let us do a draft. This goes to council for their work session on January 18th. So if we can, in a sense, if there's an actual item update versus providing them a summary of highlight discussions, right? Anything that might require a recommended change. Let us make that as a noted change, like item for their awareness.
So then we
I think-
take Michael's
That's fair, yeah.
motion, added that we do exactly that.
So I'd make a recommendation, for example, like the 0.46 acres, I'd love to have a note after that in italics or something that council sees when they look at that, to say that we have recommended that number be bumped up, or instead of 12 miles, or some higher
Other
number that we.
options that Angela had.
Yeah, exactly. But I'd love to see it in line with all those documents.
I agree.
In line versus just a summary page at the end. And then council members, because they want to be able to flip to it quick. I don't know if that's an option.
We can add a note in there that came from you all as the advisory commission comment. The options that Angela suggested, 12 miles is the greenway or side path projects that will be town funded. Anything that's developer built or privately funded are above and beyond those 12 miles of greenways.
Yeah. And any other things that we made notes on, or,
We'll make, okay, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, just put a little italics, just a little note from the,
A line item for each.
yeah, that shows, because a lot of times that gets missed when council's looking at something. If the notes from the Parks and Rec or B-City Committee makes a comment, a lot of times it gets missed by council, so
Okay.
I'd love to see that. With that added, I'd love to second it. I'd love to second the motion.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. There we
Thank you
go.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank you, Shweta.
very much.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Just email copies.
That
We're
good?
just gonna add, and I wanna know how we're gonna do this, so we're just gonna add the comment.
Just gonna add like an Excel column,
I see you have a column and a column, and we could put a bullet point.
little asterisk next to it.
Okay.
Or we can do an asterisk and.
Asterisk.
And it doesn't have to be a long, I mean, just some little explanation
But I did
that
it,
the
I mean,
Parks and
you
Rec
guys
question.
have a lot of notes, and some of it is like, you know, expressed support or discussed specific, you know, like, and
Correct.
we'll do that, and then you can see.
Perfect.
You can even make a note in there, like, council, like, pay attention to the, you know, you can
Yeah, it's pretty much what
draw
it's
their
doing.
attention to that right column.
That's right, yeah.
Good? Good?
I think we're good.
All right. I have a motion, I have a motion to adjourn.
Like,
Second?
Second.
All right, motion adjourned. Thank you very much.
aye.
Thank you.
I voted on that, that's all that matters.